Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of JakesTake.com, a New York City-based entertainment news and pop culture podcast. I am so excited because today I have a dynamic podcasting duo that blends pop culture and reality TV together. They are an emerging and influential voices regarding MTV's The Challenge, and they host a very successful podcast series called the Hedrich Files. Please help me welcome Logan Hedrich and Ali Evans.
Hey, yo.
Hey. Was that a White Claw I heard, Logan?
In my custom specialized rotten banana koozie. Thank you very much, courtesy of Ali Evans.
You're welcome, buddy.
Perfect, guys. Perfect. And also, White Claw is not an official sponsor of Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast just yet. And also, we are not affiliated with MTV or Bruno Murray Productions.
Nope.
And Viacom CBS, because we just want to make sure we get clear. So let's get down to business, guys. So could you please share the origin story of the Hedrich Files podcast for my audience?
Well, how long do we have here? Because it's sort of a long and tenuous story. So I first got into podcasting when I was living down in L.A. I was working in the film industry, and I'm like a diehard basketball and Warriors fan. So the podcast actually started as just sort of an outlet for me to talk about basketball and the Warriors. So I wanted it to be just like a Warriors or Bay Area sports centric podcast. So it was called Dodging LA, which at the time I thought was like the most clever name ever. I was like so proud of myself for that. So shout out to like Cash and Todd and Brian and all these guys I had on for years. So kind of transitioned that, kept the same general concept about it and changed the name to Points from the Key. So that was still basketball centric. My friend Dave would come on and we would do movie reviews. We reviewed like our favorite Schwarzenegger and Stallone movies, and we would just like rip the movies and talk about them for hours on end. So then I think the title was still Points from the Key, and that was still like the name of the website. And I had met my girlfriend, Diana, big shout out, producer Diana, and she brought me down to her best friend's wedding. And it was the first time I had ever met her. It was this girl named Maria, and all I knew about her was that she was a fan of The Challenge. I was like, all right, great, we're going to get along. I love this girl already. So by the end of the night, on her wedding, at the end of the night, we're at the bar, we're at the after party, and her and I are already like sharing stories about how we hated Johnny and we couldn't believe that he took the money from Sarah, and we were just appalled. And I was like, okay, this is like the start of something. We need to like get on the record and actually have a conversation about The Challenge. I think there might be something to this. So sometime between then and like the next 6 months or so, I started listening to Rob Has a Podcast, and I was like, okay, I actually really like the branding, like you do, Jake, where like your name is a part of the podcast and it's more recognizable and easier to put a face to the name, and just like better SEO and, you know, better overall way to be recognized in the community. So that's when I changed over to Hedrich Files. And I kind of want Hedrich Files to be like the umbrella and still have, you know, The Challenge and movie podcast, and Ali went on to host our Rotten Butterbeer, talking about the Harry Potter movies. So from all that, Maria kind of fades into the background. She's got a whole life she's got going on down in Monterey. And Ali, why don't you take over from here when we met?
So Logan and I met on Twitter, and I had actually just won a day at Universal Orlando with members of the Challenge cast. So whoa. I had this like totally epic weekend down in Orlando with my husband and several members of the cast. And Logan and I somehow got connected by like a mutual, you know, Challenge fan person. And I just replied to him one day. No, sorry. He saw one of my tweets that made a very hilarious
reply.
Right. Yeah. Very hilarious pun. And basically told me that was like my peak. Like, this is the best you'll ever be on Twitter. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. but he was wrong. I have gotten much better since then.
I believe I said it was your magnum opus tweet.
Yes, you did. So then I basically just said, like, hey, let's be friends. I forced Logan to be friends with me. That's what happened. And used the day at Universal Orlando as leverage to come on Rotten Banana. And the very first episode that I did with Logan was the recap of the Final Reckoning final.
Oh God, that one.
So we
that
did
infamous final.
It was like a mix of like, tell us who you are as like a challenge fan, and then the thing about Orlando. And we actually didn't even talk about the Orlando day that much. That's what's so funny is we immediately got into like, oh my God, can you imagine if Coral came back? And then we recapped the episode.
Sorry to interrupt. I would love Coral to come back, and I'm a newbie.
Yeah, we like Coral. We love Coral. Okay. But yeah, and then I guess it happened, obviously that was the end of Final Reckoning, and then War of the Worlds next? Yeah. And Maria had an obligation that she had to be a part of, and Logan said, would you want to come on and do this again? And then it kind of morphed into me and Logan and Maria when she was available, and now Logan's like one of my closest friends, and I actually went back and listened to that first episode, part of it the other day that we did.
Oh God.
And it's so cute, Logan, because we like barely knew each other, but really clicked right away. And one of the things that people say about us that's like my favorite compliment that we get is you can tell that we have a good time doing this and that we really like enjoy and respect one another's opinions, and our friendship is just so great. And you can literally hear it in the first episode. So that's the story of how I came to be. Hedrich Files existed way longer before I was even a part of it, but that's kind of how we got here.
And I'm happy you tuned. I gotta say, it's amazing that social media has brought a lot of people together, because the thing is, you're not just the only people from the challenge community and the reality TV community. I got to give a shout out to my friend Drew Angelman of Angel Cake Entertainment. He's a very good, one of the best up and comers when it comes to challenge. And also, I want to give a shout out to the Grand Pumbaa of reality TV podcasting, Rob Cesarino, and also another mutual friend of ours, Scott Yeager of Challenge Mania.
Yeah, actually, I met Scott before I met Logan. Scott was part of the thing in Orlando. We met that way. And then Logan and I met, did the podcast, and I guess Logan was like, yeah, I've got Allie Evans on, and Scott was like, wait, I already know her. And it was just this very weird thing that all three of us knew each other, but not through one another. Like everybody had met in different ways. So,
right. I had actually had Scott on the podcast just to do an interview, I think probably 6 months after he had started Challenge Mania. And, I expected to, talk about his history and the challenge. And by the end of it, we're just swapping old, like, wrestling stories for 45 minutes. I was like, okay, we get each other now.
I get each other. And by the way, it's definitely, hopefully, I would love with 125th anniversary if just you two plus Drew and Scott and Derek all came together for a huge, big thing.
That's very flattering to be put into that company. Thank you, Jake.
You're so welcome. So I want to get started because, Logan, we got to talk about Rotten Coconut first. So it's the only CBS show that you covered. So why did you chose Survivor over Amazing Race or Big Brother or so on and so forth?
Well, apparently, in the recent history, I've been bullied into watching Big Brother All-Stars, which is coming up by Allie and all her friends online. So
I'm so happy you did that, Allie.
What else are you going to do? Like, what are you doing that's so great that you can't watch whatever this is this season on Big Brother? You have the time.
At some point, we'll probably inevitably do a podcast on that. Although I'm hearing there's less and less challenge people that are going to be on it. The rumors are flying. But to jump back to your question about Rotten Coconut. So I remember watching the very first season of Survivor. Year 2000, I remember the trailer hits during the Super Bowl and everyone's like, holy crap, what is this new show? Like, new social experiment, it's going to be crazy. I probably watched the first, 6 or so seasons as they aired. got to high school, college, kind of completely forgot about it. Then when I started dating Diana, which was now, 4.5 years ago, she was fairly diehard Survivor watcher. And I remember she was watching whatever the season was 4 years ago. I think it must have been Korong. And I just kind of would tune in, be on my phone for, 50 minutes of it and watch a couple minutes of it, and didn't really have any interest. But then another season passes and I'm, maybe watching a half hour of it. And then the next season was, I think, David vs. Goliath. And I was like, okay, this is a lot better than I remember. I think I had just become such a challenge snob. I remember always comparing the challenge and Survivor on the podcast and just thinking,
you can't do that, the challenge. You can't do that.
I think I had always said that the challenge was a superior reality TV show simply for the elimination element of it, because no other show has what the challenge has in their eliminations. But I was very clearly underestimating the vast power of the social game in Survivor, which, having gone back and watched it and now podcasting about entire seasons in the last couple weeks, man, the social game on Survivor dwarfs anything that they do on the challenge. So, I love Survivor. I consider myself a hardcore fan once again. Hunter and I, Hunter, who's recently moved back up to Oregon, are, still doing our Survivor series. We did Heroes vs. Villains, and we were going to do season 1, but watched a couple episodes and I was like, ugh, the sexism and homophobia on this is kind of horrifying. So I might want to skip that one. So I'm not against podcasting about other CBS shows, but probably only seen maybe 1 or 2 seasons of The Amazing Race. Jacob, would you recommend? Don't they have a season in the can that they're about to air?
Oh yes, I'm very excited. Yeah, oh yes, it's been a long time since I watched The Amazing Race. My grandpa Ralph was a huge fan of him, of that show, and then also I got back onto Survivor full time for Winners at War, which was a great season, and I gotta say, I can't believe you guys disfigured Heroes versus Villains like that.
I was a little, if not a lot, disappointed in the level of gameplay, but I guess I wasn't taking into consideration that it's this is 10 years ago, the game has evolved exponentially since then. There's every season builds on the previous season for the most part. I wouldn't say the gameplay increases every season, 40 seasons consecutively, but from then to now, if Tony did what he did in Winners at War back then, it would be considered so radical that they would have voted him out night 1. The very first chance they would have gotten rid of him. But people respect aggressive gameplay, and Tony plays this crazy combination of he's charming, but he's cutthroat, and he'll make a deal and he'll go back on it, but he's still the person who he burns is still willing to work with him. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I know that we will talk more and more about it, but we'll go back on it. We'll go back for Survivor history later. But right now, I want to bring Allie back in because both of our podcasts have sit down with people who've been on Survivor, with the challenge, Big Brother. So, what have been some of your favorite interviews?
I will go first. Obviously, I really love our interview with Jemmy. I flex this a lot, but Jemmy and I are very good friends, and I just like the vibe of that interview because it's not as much of an interview as it is 3 friends just kind of sitting down, chatting, having a good time, and that's what this should be about, right? It shouldn't feel like everything has to be these hard-hitting questions. But with that said, another one of my favorites is our second interview that we did with Rogan. He was such a good sport, and he is so self-aware of who he plays on the challenge. A lot of people know we had a great relationship with Dee, and we were definitely Team Dee when all their relationship drama went down, and I kind of called Rogan out on some stuff, and I was like, hey, this didn't really play out so well. Are you aware that you looked like the bad guy? Do you regret what you did? Why does everybody question the women's ability to run a final but never the men's, when historically the men gas and the women, whatever. And he was just a really great sport, and he took it all in stride and answered questions honestly. And I think by being honest and saying yeah, that was a little bit Slytherin of me, he sort of like, rather than winning us over with just being like nice and charming and sweet, which he did the first time he came on the podcast, he actually won us over by being like honest and self-aware and candid with us, not giving like, you know, softball answers. And he took us seriously as like basically journalists covering the challenge. And I feel like that was like a big moment for us, Logan, where we were like, man, he didn't dodge our questions. He didn't get offended. He answered them. He knew he had to own up to the things that he did. And he took us seriously as the people asking them. So that one stands out for me a lot.
And I'll add, this was actually said off the air, but I'm sure he won't like care that we're blowing up his spot, quote unquote. Because I think we interviewed him, what was it, the week that he eliminated Jay. And so he was kind of playing up that he was like, oh yeah, you know, I crushed Jay. I smashed him into the dirt and I stepped on him. And then as soon as I pressed end on record, he's like, actually, me and Jay are pretty good friends. And he's in on it as much as I am, that he was just like, yeah, let's play up this rivalry and make it a storyline for the show. So I really respected him for that.
And I gotta say, if we're comparing stories, Paulie, both times I've interviewed him, he has been forthright. He's been very forthright with me. He actually respects me talking to that. And then also I love talking with him. And also I was so surprised by Joss. Joss is and he did say that Rogan, he was very upset with all the backlash that Rogan received because of what happened with Jay. And he also said that and I was like sad to hear that he got death threats when he took out Georgia. It's a reality TV show, people.
Yeah, that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
Rogan's had an interesting ride on the challenge. I mean, he's either been, you know, the guy who went out first on Vendettas or the bad guy. And I think or the guy who like didn't deserve to, you know, go to a final. Like people seem to latch on to the bad things about him. And I think we kind of did for a while too, but I think he is approaching, good guy status with some of the challenge fam.
I have to agree with that because I watched the after show with his after shows with Jay, and you could see that friendship there. Mm-hmm. You could see that, and I think it'd be very interesting if you had Joss in the mix and see what happens when Jay and Joss are there, and see if that could be a potential Young Bucks UK US.
That's
I like
a fun thought. I like that.
And that's actually a really interesting point that you made about Paulie, because I always refer to him as Voldemort, he who must not be named on Twitter, just as kind of a running gag. And I've definitely leaned in the sense of like, not that I like don't support the relationship with Cara, but it's just like he seems like kind of a scummy dude on TV, and he's done some like, you know, not so friendly stuff. But to your credit, and to, you know, I guess like Love War Challenges and a bunch of, and Challenge Mania, all the other podcasts that have interviewed him, they adore him. They said when he's not on TV playing this character, he is incredibly friendly. He's really approachable. He loves to talk about the show. So like, I think we got to put him in the same category as Rogan, as he's self-aware. He knows what he's doing. He realizes what portraying a character on reality TV can do for you. And yeah, he's exploded since his, Big Brother season. I also wanted to mention some of the my most proud interviews. I will say, I feel like I got the most respect from the challenge community when I did my interview with Kenny. Now, unfortunately, he said I had to interview him inside of a jet turbine engine, which is why the audio quality is so bad. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I think that was the first interview that like really put me on the map of like, I am a complete outsider. I have no connections. All I'm doing is just sliding in DMs and seeing who responds. And Kenny actually tells a funny story about it. When he went back on Challenge Mania, Scott said something about, he's like, wow, big shout out to Logan for bringing you back into the challenge community. And Kenny's like, well, actually, I didn't even realize it was going to be a challenge interview. There was like some CrossFit tournament going on, or like championship going on in New York, and he thought that I was interviewing about that. He's like, oh yeah, and Logan jumps in, he's like, welcome to the Rotten Banana Podcast, covering all things the challenge. And he's like, what the hell? Didn't realize this is what I was signing up for. But he just rolled with the punches for an hour with me. And so I really respected him for that. And I just got to say, absolutely biggest of possible shout outs to Allie, because she's the one that gets like all these incredible interviews for us. She's the one that landed Jemmy, Kayla, Wes, like all of these, you know, stars of the show these days. Allie's the one with the connections, so she's the one making my job easy over here.
Thanks, Logan.
Alrighty, guys. So now we got the challenge. So we got to get into some challenge news and challenge stuff that's been going on. So I'm sorry to do this to you guys because it's been a rough one for everybody, but it has to involve D. So during your recap of the Rotten Bananas recap of Challenge Total Madness finale, you mentioned that you stopped covering the challenge because of the when controversy. So when did that? I gotta say it was. I respect your decision for doing that, and like every teach their own for all the podcasters. So I hate to bring this up, and I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so why did you decide not to cover that during that time? And then we know that when things cool off down the line 5 years later or something like that, would you guys be interested in bringing her back 5 years after this controversy is aligned? 5 or 10 or someone?
Allie, you want to take first crack?
Sure. So we actually recorded a podcast the week that all this happened. And it was almost 2 hours long. It was an episode recap in the second hour. But the first hour was basically just us kind of like blurting out all the emotions that we were feeling. You know, this is a show that we love, that we've watched for 20 years. And it's disheartening to see not just the D situation, but the things that we've seen throughout the years on the show that just feel icky and don't feel good. And, you know, for us, the ultimate feeling that we left with was like, why should we have to sacrifice our own integrity to watch our favorite show? And after we recorded that episode, I had like this whole wave of emotions come over me. And I texted Logan and I was like, I don't really know how to articulate this, but I feel like we both just put some pressure on ourselves to have all the answers about this situation. And I've said it before, but just because we host a challenge podcast does not mean that when these like real world things happen and people start seeking answers, we don't have them. And because of that, the entire first hour of that episode was us just being like, I don't really know what to say. And Logan listened to it and played it back and he was like trying to edit it and he was like, I don't even want to air this. Like, it doesn't feel important enough. It doesn't feel like ours should be the voices that are amplified right now. And so we took the opportunity to step back and say, what is important right now? You know, I don't really know, like, and then as far as coming back, we didn't really have a date for that. We just said, when this feels good again, let's do it. And it did happen to coincide with Dee leaving the show. And that's really not why we came back. I didn't want to record episodes week after week and feel like there was this cloud.
Like an elephant in the room.
Yes, this cloud of like, Dee is still on the show. We know she's been edited out. And have that essentially take over the narrative and not really be able to talk about the show without saying like, oh, well, I can't believe they aired Dee's vote in the, you know, tribunal. And so it did happen that way, that it was when she left the show, but it was truly Nelson's act of overwhelming friendship, generosity to Coray that I texted Logan and I was like, we have to come back. Because we needed something, I'm not going to say like equally, like something amazing to offset the icky feeling. Like, I'm not going to say what Nelson did made us forget about the D situation, but we just wanted something that felt good again and made us proud to say, like, we have a challenge podcast and this is what we talk about, you know?
I got to say, Nelson was probably, that moment with Nelson was probably one of the best moments from that season. Mm-hmm. And I think Nelson redeemed himself in a lot of ways because he took down that, he sacrificed his own game. And I think when I had when I pick him as a Legends cat, if there was a 25th anniversary, season 40, like an anniversary season for the challenge, I think Nelson will probably be one of the names thought of.
I don't even know if he redeemed himself, but he also in a way redeemed the show this season. Like, when you look back on this season, you're going to think of a couple of things. Some of them aren't going to be so great, but one of them is going to be what Nelson did. And that ultimately, Logan, I'm going to let you talk. Sorry, but that was the like feel good, I'm proud to do this again thing that happened.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, he, I think, is now the all-time leader in elimination wins for men, which is like absolutely crazy. The dude has only been on since Rivals 3, where he was just like brought in because a team quit. So I will say this about the D situation. I think Allie and I were both very disgusted with what she said, with MTV's handling of it, and with like kind of the conversation around it. And we just needed to step back and kind of take a breather and be like, remind ourselves why we got into the challenge podcasting game. I think D, her comments came from a place of like massive ignorance and really no longer understanding the line between real life and reality TV. Because I think the lead up to the specific comments that got her fired was she was talking crap with like Swaggy and Bailey on Twitter and Instagram, and she was just saying some like really bad stuff to them, but then texting them on the side and being like, oh, actually, yeah, don't delete that tweet. Like, let's build up a storyline for next season, which goes to show her mentality of like, the show never ends. The show is always happening, and there is no line for what's appropriate or not. I'll lean into the villain role for the next season. You can bring up these tweets next season. And so I think that combined with MTV's incredibly selective punishment for both her and Taylor Selfridge, which is like, okay, you're going to take Taylor and Corey's show off the air because of tweets from 2012 that were already out there when you put her on Are You the One, when you put her on Teen Mom Special. Like, why is now the moment that you choose? And obviously the reasoning is obvious because all of this stuff with D was happening, and then the protests were ongoing. And then, you mentioned it in your notes later about Rogan's controversial tweets, and Ninja has some tweets where she has written the N-word, and it's like, it goes on and on and on, and I don't understand the picking and choosing of, oh, this feels right at this moment to punish this person. And I said this on the pod that never got released, and like, MTV isn't as woke as you think. MTV is a production company, and a production company exists to make a profit for the investors. And once the controversy line starts messing with the potential to earn and to get sponsors, that's when action needs to be taken. So people need to realize that MTV isn't like the woke TV channel out there. It's like they portray that, but they also are under Viacom, and Viacom exists to make money. So that's kind of my final word on D. And I think that your second part of the question about bringing her back on speaks to like cancel culture. And first of all, I don't really think cancel culture actually exists. People talk about it a lot, but there's some people that have done fairly horrible things and still have a platform. And so I am not opposed to bringing her on. I think this like exile we've put her into is probably worse for her mental health than, collectively coming together as a community and being like, this is the reason that these things were wrong. You can't be on TV because you said these things, but we should educate you and, try to bring you along and up to speed as to why, she's from Australia. It's a completely different culture down there. So I don't think that we should just outright cancel her and be like, oh yeah, you're a horrible person. Guess what? Bye. Go figure out your new career or whatever. So I'm not against bringing her on. I don't think now or a year from now is probably the appropriate time, but, I think 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on what she does in the future, I would like to speak to her again. I don't think we should excommunicate her from our lives forever.
100%, because the thing is, I would be happy to welcome her on my podcast and give her a platform when she's redeemed herself. But at the same time, the situation with West, I look at West the same way I look at Anderson Cooper, as the one that betrayed Kathy Griffin, when she was under the bus and criticized her. And so I feel that West is two-faced, and it's tough for me to get on that, and I will never forget that.
Are you talking about the picture with Kathy Griffin when she was holding the Donald Trump head?
Yeah,
okay.
And I correlate that. So West left me a better taste in my mouth because she is an Australian in Kansas City, my hometown. And for him to listen to the culture, to listen to the people canceling her and kicking her out of this home when she has nowhere to go. That's why I'm not a Wes Bergman fan.
No, I totally get that. And there's been a lot of, non-show controversial moments for Wes. Like the stuff with Davon that allegedly happened, that he denied on the reunion, that I'm not sure really where the footage or the proof kind of laid the lines for what he actually said versus what happened. And then, just writing things are never good. Us included, we did it, but things are never good when you have to take a screenshot of a long thing you write in the iPhone Notes app and tweet it. That just means the situation is bad. So when Wes tweeted that out and he was like, oh yeah, she is no longer welcome in my city and we're kicking her out. It's like, well, aren't you her brotherly, fatherly figure? Shouldn't you be finding her and helping her into therapy or getting... I don't know. I too, Jacob, was
exactly
a little disgusted with how Wes handled that.
Yeah, I'm just glad I'm not the only one, because the thing is, I don't want to be a pariah and challenge me because of that thing, and that scares me, because the thing is, I really feel for her, and as someone that's dealt with depression and anxiety, and with all that, and when MTV made her the biggest villain, and when Camilla has done stuff like that, when Kenny. And when Paula and all the stuff with Bananas too, and even Rogan, I'm it's basically Dee being the Kathy Griffin of the challenge. But however, Kathy Griffin, I have a feeling Dee will come back stronger.
And one final note, I just wanted to say, since you mentioned, the production literally had footage 2 times, 2 different seasons, Cutthroat and Dirty 30 of Camilla calling an African-American man the N-word to his face. Protected her both times just because we weren't in these, far more racially sensitive times. And it's that's just to take a step back and be you protected this horrible person and didn't do anything about it until she crossed the fourth wall production line and, smacked intern or production assistant or producer or whatever it was on Champs vs. Pros. That ultimately was the final straw that got her kicked off. And this doesn't even mention all the stuff with Jordan and his Instagram lives trying to save face. So, I mean, that is a whole can of worms to open up right there. But I do really appreciate you bringing up this topic and giving us a platform to discuss it.
Yeah, and another thing, that I just want to say, one of the things that we talk about a lot is we can only comment on the information that is provided to us. So you don't need to feel bad, Jake, for your reaction to information that Wes put out in the world. If Wes had said nothing and we were all speculating what he was thinking, that's one thing, because that's just us making stuff up for the sake of something to talk about. But he took to social media and he immediately put out this knee-jerk reaction that he was kicking her out of the house that night or something. And you don't need to feel bad about your reaction to information that is literally directly handed to you. So don't worry about ostracizing yourself because you were hey, this doesn't feel good. That's the whole purpose of what we're doing here. We talk about the things that we like and then we talk about the things that we don't. So don't beat yourself up.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And I'm very grateful because I think we're going to be friends after this as well. And I'm very happy to have you guys here. I love this chemistry.
I'm very into it. We need to get you to a Challenge Mania Live event because those are a great time.
Alrighty. Hopefully, Scott, if you're listening.
Yeah, hopefully those happen again soon in our lives.
Yeah, true.
Gosh.
All right, so even though I'm disgusted about Wes with the D situation, I am impressed with the way that he handled himself, ending his decades-long feud with Johnny Bananas, and with this partnership in Total Madness. So they ended. They said even though Wes took himself out, Bananas took Wes out, they said at the end they want to be working together in the future seasons. I've talked to Joss about this. I've talked to Paulie about this. Paulie said he doesn't mind this. It's going to have to be up to them if they work together. But if they target him, he's going to target them. Joss told me that he wished that he would worked with Bananas beforehand. So how do you think this dynamic will affect future seasons?
I think that Wes tells the story that I guess it was on the reunion last week. That's like, oh, we were in the limo on our way to the music awards or the music video awards, whatever it was, and we, in 15 minutes, squashed the beef of 15 years. And first of all, that is total BS. These guys have had this plan in the works for at least, I would say, oh man, maybe since Rivals 3. Like, I would definitely say pre-Wes's hiatus, that they've had the idea to work together, because once they did, it wasn't Dr. Phil. What was the show they did together?
It was Maury, because I remember watching
Povich.
First Look and laughing hysterically.
Once they did that show, the cat was out of the bag that the rivalry was superficial at best. That these guys were actually friends behind the scenes. And I would actually argue even before that, once Bananas was selling Christmas, ugly Christmas sweaters with the gingerbread man caption of Wes's face on it. It's like, once he was doing that, I was like, no. There's some copyright infringement here that must be going on, or Wes and him are actually friends, and this has been an act for longer than we realize. So I think now that the straw that broke the camel's back is them on Total Madness squashing, quote unquote, squashing the beef, and the hug heard around the world in episode 2, episode 3, whenever that was. I am incredibly excited to see these guys actually publicly move together as an alliance. So bring both back for season 36. That is my say on the do they have an alliance name? It can't just be Wes Bananas. We need some cutesy couple name, right, Allie?
Bananas.
I gotta say, because the thing is, I could see a lot of things going on, because the thing is with, we don't know how Paulie's gonna, Paulie or Tony or Leroy, Cara and Maria, and also, I think, and also Cam, we don't know how they're going to react, because the thing is, those 5 people are always involved with them.
You're talking about the big alliance from War of the Worlds 2 last season?
Yeah,
definitely.
And also, when I meant by Tony Raines, I meant Tony Raines as well, because Tony is friends with Bananas, and I think, and it's Bananas number one or number 2 when it comes to guys. And we don't know have Tony and Wes interacted?
I think on a Champs vs. Stars season.
Yeah. Did they get along?
Yeah, I think so. It was the last Champs vs. Stars that Tony and CT won. When
Team
Wes
Dad Bod.
kind of Team Dad Bod. When Wes kind of bowed down to Louise and what's that guy's name? Casper.
The dancer? Yeah.
My thing about Wes and Bananas is that it was kind of inevitable, right? If you work for a company that has hundreds of employees, the 2 people that have been there the longest are eventually going to get along. So it's kind of what we've seen with CT too. CT was Wes's partner on Arrival season, and they fought with Bananas that season, but they now kind of all have this mutual respect for one another. They've been around for the longest, and ultimately at the end of the day, Bananas sees himself as a producer of this show, I think, in the sense that he knows how to cultivate a storyline and create something interesting. And then on the other hand, Wes is a businessman. And I think they finally got to the point where like the producer brain and the businessman brain came together and realized that the natural, ebb and flow of this relationship is, what if we started working together? You can't have the rivalry. I mean, we said it on War of the Worlds 1, 2, both. Were they both on both? Anyways, we basically said, like, you can't have this rivalry forever. This storyline is getting played out. You've made us watch this for 10 years. And they figured that out and decided to take in another direction. I'm surprised they didn't do it sooner. And I love it. And I think it's great to watch. And I am curious to see the dynamic now that it's out in the open, how other people respond to it.
Alrighty, so we got it. Speaking of other people, we got to bring in, this is the welcome to the news corner, because we have 3 big stories that's happened on the challenge. So let's start off with someone that we all love, but thanks to Challenge Mania, and I guys get start and credit this, because they brought Mark Long back into the challenge game, and people want to see him come back. But however, he's not going to be alone. He's actually been producing and wants to produce an OG challenge series that features a lot of old favorites of ours, such as Veronica, such as Beth, and all these amazing people that we haven't seen in a long time. So, in your humble opinion, guys, what were your thoughts about this? And can this thing go from, if MTV can't go to it, can you guys see it on E! Or Netflix or another network?
Al, you want to take the first crack again?
So this is like, there's a list of like maybe 3 things ever that Logan and I have disagreed on, and this is one of them.
Really?
Yeah. I won't speak for Logan. I think that I hadn't thought about another network. I basically thought that the road that this would go down is, if MTV doesn't pick it up, then it'll probably exist as like a Kickstarter campaign that'll be fan funded and maybe live on YouTube or Patreon or something to that effect. Where they like hire producers and video and editors and all that themselves. I want to see it on MTV. I think that's the only way that it'll have real credibility. I think as soon as you put it on something like YouTube, where anybody on the planet can make something on YouTube, it loses that credibility of like, these are people that have been on MTV for years and years and years, and we want to see them come back. So I definitely want to see it happen. I think it needs to be the right balance of like friendly competition. It'll be some combination, if it happens, I think, of like a real world season where it's like kind of everybody just like hanging out and enjoying each other's company, but also Champs vs. Stars, and maybe like a little bit of Big Brother too, where like everything isn't necessarily physically competitive, but there's like sort of fun games and that kind of thing. Logan?
Okay, I think that there is maybe a 5 to 10% chance that this airs on MTV. I have said it on Rotten Banana. MTV and Buna Murray clearly adore and love and cater to the 25 to 40 age audience, is specifically for the challenge and this type of content. They are clearly in love with like people born like 85 to 90, and have kind of basically consistently cast people exclusively from that age group in that pool since like, I don't know, Rivals 3, like maybe even a little before that. Swaggy was by far the youngest cast member on Total Madness at 25. I said this on the last podcast. Evelyn was 17 and a half when they first cast her on Fresh Meat. They no longer, I mean, she was 18 when they filmed, but she was definitely not that old when they were first talking to her. They do not cast that young, and I don't think that they're going to cast, the CT Bananas. I think Anissa is Wes's age at like 34, 35 also. Like, they are just not bringing those type of people back onto MTV, or at least within the challenge realm umbrella. So I would absolutely love to see this as a Patreon type show, a la what Wes was doing with his, I forget what they called it, the show out in Kansas City.
Yeah, the basically
Friends,
what they do is community
Friends and Benefits or something.
There we go.
Yeah, you are correct.
I would love to see that.
I haven't paid for it. That's not because
I am not even,
guys,
and I'm not even paying for that as well.
No.
I would love to see it on another network that, also, like Ali said, lends credibility to this being like a legitimate show and not just a web series. I just don't see any way that Bunim/Murray is like, Mark, take the reins here and, run with it. We're going to give you the ball. We're going to give you the platform and the finances to make the show happen. Bunim/Murray really does not produce that many shows. They have The Challenge. I believe that they have still been the producers of the production company that makes The Kardashians for 10, 20 seasons, whatever the hell, however many seasons that they have with them. And they're like cash cow. They're not really looking to expand and add secondary, third type programming to what's already on their plate, especially given the place where TV and film production is right now in our coronavirus world. So I love it. I love the concept of it. Mark Long is probably in my top 5 favorite challengers, road rulers, real worlder ever. I just don't see any way that this is on MTV, unfortunately.
Alrighty, so we got to talk about a friend of your podcast, because he also made a big apology on our friend's Challenge Mania. He was, Us Weekly reported that Rogan has apologized for his controversial tweets from his past, and now what are they going to do? That's the big question on everybody's mind, is what are they going to do?
Well,
Can I ask a question first about that?
Yeah.
When are those tweets from?
I am honestly not sure. I think
the article says 10 years ago.
Okay.
So 2010, something like that. And this is where the hypocrisy of MTV and Bunim/Murray comes into play. So he claims, which I'm not doubting him, but he says that he was quoting a song from Drake I won't recite the exact tweet, but I think one was saying he was reciting lyrics from Drake, and one was actually just typing out a tweet that was a Drake lyric. This is the exact thing, basically, that Taylor Selfridge was doing. She was putting quotes around her tweet saying, somebody else said this, and I'm just tweeting it. So I really respect Rogan for owning up to it and saying, this is what I did, I apologize for it, and I guess the other one is a quote from a line from Pulp Fiction, of which Tarantino has an incredibly problematic past of using racist language in his movies. So I respect Rogan for coming out, and you can't even say trying to get ahead of this story because it's been in the Twitter sphere for a long time. But I don't know. I think that he understands where he is and where the world is a very different place from 10 years ago. But it's also like, well, you're canceling other people for the same thing. So I don't really get where or how I'm supposed to feel about this. I don't know. It's another kind of like confusing moment as a friend to our podcast and to the online challenge community.
For me, I don't think it's so much a matter of, and I don't think this is what you were saying, Logan, but I don't think Rogan should have been fired with Taylor Selfridge. I think Taylor Selfridge should have not been fired with Rogan.
Right.
I think, I'm not making excuses. 10 years ago, Logan and I are going to be recapping Fast and Furious movies coming up here in the next few weeks. And we had a conversation the other day that in the first one, somebody calls somebody else the F word, which is a gay slur. And 10 years ago, or whenever that movie came out, the same time that Rogan was tweeting inappropriate stuff, we didn't think that was as offensive. And I'm not saying that that is the same thing as the N-word, because it's obviously not. But, I've been rewatching Entourage with my husband, and they call each other the R word repeatedly, that I'm also not going to say. But I will say the apology goes a long way. And 10 years ago, I think you should have the opportunity to apologize for something that you said before you had any kind of platform. And if you can own up to it and say, I'm terribly sorry for those who I've offended. I did see in that article that you sent, Jake, that he's donating 100% of bearwear sales to a Black Lives Matter charity. So he's doing the right things. Again, bringing it back, I think it's ridiculous that Taylor Selfridge was fired, but I think we need to give each other a little bit more grace about the way that we were speaking and communicating and what was acceptable 10 years ago. When Twitter was like new, none of us knew what to do on Twitter 10 years ago. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but it was just a different time, and you have to give people the chance to adapt and evolve.
I agree completely. I hope that Rogan has learned his lesson. I would love for Rogan to come on the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, especially now that Joss has done it. So
I just think that by trying to cancel someone for something 10 years ago, you're not allowing or you're not allowing any personal or, societal growth. You're saying this thing that you did in the past disqualifies you from ever being relevant in society again. And I just don't see how that's productive. Like, we can see it, we acknowledge it, he apologizes for it, and we're not going to forget it. We're not just going to wipe the slate clean and be like, yeah, that never happened. But we need to be like, no, we recognize that this was wrong, and you see why it's wrong. It's not just enough to be like, oh yeah, what I did was bad. You need to understand the context that it was set in. You need to understand, we live in a different society now, and especially just the last couple of months. This is why I think cancel culture is kind of crazy. You're not allowing for personal growth. And I'm not saying that people don't need to go away for a while and learn on their own. I think that is hugely important. But to say that growth isn't allowed is crazy.
I agree completely. So we have one last news story. So one of my dear friends is fitness entrepreneur Scott Herman at Scott Herman Fitness. He's also known from Real World Brooklyn. So he announced on Instagram that he is very interested in coming on the challenge after an 11-year hiatus from MTV. Now, Scott is a fitness entrepreneur. He has the audience, and I think he has a business acumen. He's very fit. So I believe that he's ready. But in your humble opinion, guys, how would his involvement change the challenge landscape?
I just don't think it's something that is needed to enhance the show. I know he's been on MTV over 10 years ago. He wouldn't be making a return to the challenge. He'd be making a return to MTV. And I think that's an important distinction, because when we say we want people back, like the We Want OGs, those were people that were on the challenge, which to my understanding, he was not. And I think he sees that he has this job and has been successful in the fitness community, and that there's a overlap in a network he used to be on that has a physical based TV show. And I think for me, it feels like it's more of an opportunity for him. He stands to benefit more as an individual than we do as an audience. I'm just not sure, in my opinion, it's the right fit. I think I think it's an opportunity for him to not take advantage, that's the wrong way,
It seems like more of a one-way street that's beneficial to him than it is for MTV. To be honest, I did watch Real World Brooklyn, and I only really remember the people that went on to do the challenge, which is Devin, Chet, Sarah Rice, and the other one that was on Battle of the Seasons with them, the dolphin trainer. What was his name?
He looks like Yes. I can't remember his name.
That's a good call.
He looks exactly like Yes. I don't want to see a guy who was never on the challenge take the spot of someone who was on the challenge and might be able to make a 10-year later return and is fit and ready and could come on and dominate. Because I think there are people like that who have done the challenge and would like to get the call, and they're not getting the call. So it seems unfair for this guy to get the call.
I understand that. So basically, as a friend, I would love to see him on there. I think he'd be great. I think he has a business acumen to tackle Wes, and I think he really would school Paulie and Joss when it comes to fitness, being a fitness trainer, an actual fitness trainer. And then but at the same time, I think a lot of people will be screaming, why did Scott go? I see your point where you're saying, why is Scott there when you have Brad who's eager to come back?
Right.
You have Darrell who's coming ready to come back. When we had Derek, who we've all been Derek Kate have screaming come back. We have Marlon as well, who's become a very big face of the community. And we have the Mia as well. Those guys who are like eager to come back, or old schoolers who are ready to come back.
Yeah, I was going to mention Marlon because that does seem like a similar situation, but with him having maybe a little more credibility or likelihood, I should say, to get back on the show because he had already done the challenge and it's been a smaller window since he had been on. I mean, he does fall into this age window that I was discussing earlier. I assume he's probably our age, 30 something. I just don't see how he has any better chance than like someone else that has, a couple 100,000 followers on Instagram, that is in the fitness community, that is interested in getting in reality TV. It just seems like equal footing for that type of person.
Alrighty, so basically, thank you very much, guys, for the news. So now I have a little activity for you. So in 2023, the challenge will be celebrating its 25th anniversary. I sent them a very big group, Brand Steel style, of all the people that I would love to see face off in the melee style of the challenge, and you guys thought it was a really good list. But however, where are you going? Because that's going to be very time consuming. I got to say that I'm going to give you an opportunity. If I come to CBS and Brennan Murray say, hey, Allie, Logan, do you want to help plan the 25th anniversary special? What would it include? And it could be a whole season of 25 years, or what would you guys think?
Well, here's the thing about the challenge, especially basically post War of the Worlds. I would say a soft like post Rivals 3 once they introduced Are You the One, but definitely strongly post War of the Worlds. Where there's no longer any feeder systems on MTV for them to cast from. In that the challenge is, I would argue, maybe the most forward-thinking reality show, competition show, in terms of their casting. Because they're really kind of no longer looking to the past. They're really forward thinking in grabbing Survivor castmates and Big Brother and Geordie Shore. And, there's the hits and the misses. Dee was a hit for a while, and that was a low risk, big reward. And then there's like the Shaileens of the world where low risk and less than zero reward. But in terms of the group that you put together, I mean, I co-sign 100% of these names. I love it from top to bottom. I got a chance to shake hands with Abram Boise and talk to him about the challenge here in San Francisco and talk to him about what's it called, Sunflower Studios, something like that. His art production studio that he has. And just like to see him competing once again, like him coming back out of nowhere on Bloodlines was like mind blowing at the time. Could not believe that they convinced him to come back. I just don't, if we're talking fantasy casting, like I would adore for a Coral to come back, for an Abram to come back, for Rachel and Sarah and Brad and all these like legends of the show. But if we're being realistic, I think maybe like CT probably on his last legs. Anissa probably on her last legs for getting cast on the show. I just don't see how they go back and have a Winners at War type casting of a season, because the game with there was the heyday of the Justin Booth brand of the challenge, from, 8-10 years ago to pre-Bloodlines, and then Bloodlines through whenever he came back, Final Reckoning, when he took that 4-season layoff. From then to now, the show is just so incredibly physically demanding. And I'm not saying that because you're old, you can no longer partake or you're no longer qualified. I just think that they're looking for, and I think the casting of Bear and Kyle and Georgia is really indicative of like, it doesn't matter how interesting you are if you don't have the pre-established baseline of an audience or an Instagram following. Like, if you don't have that, they essentially don't cast anyone out of obscurity at all anymore for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years now. I feel like Jay was probably the least known person to like the MTV community that was cast on this current season. But I mean, if we're going carte blanche and I can cast anyone and they say yes, guaranteed, you're damn right that I'm casting Coral because I love that girl.
I want to see Coral back so badly. It's not even funny because I want to see how she has paved the way for so many of the females of today.
I would want to see 2 things to celebrate 25 years of the challenge. The first, do you guys remember that there was a official broadcasted onto MTV Real World Awards ceremony show?
Oh yes, I heard
you
about
remember?
Those. I heard about this.
They had everybody like that they had cast on the Real World. It was probably to celebrate the Real World's 20th season. So, you know, some kind of benchmark.
Which was probably
season.
Brooklyn. Brooklyn was 20 or 21, wasn't it?
I don't remember, but this was like such a mess of a show. Like everybody got absolutely lit, but they essentially gave away superlatives. And I think that the Challenge Awards would be amazing to celebrate an anniversary.
I totally agree.
And I also said at the beginning of this season that it was Johnny's 20th. I think a roast of Johnny Bananas would be really fun. You know, like on Comedy Central. There's so much material. As far as this season goes, and this speaks to Logan's point about we don't have that natural funnel from the Real World and definitely not Road Rules to put people on the challenge. I have decided that I think the most fun season and a way to get people on the show that's not just fresh meat is to have a challenge season where we have our challenge vets that we know and love filming the season. And then like halfway through, they find out there's another half of fresh meat rookies that have been participating in their own challenge season. And then they somehow come together to like compete at the end, or they join forces, or they all move into the house together. Essentially Invasion, but it's a house full of people that we don't know, that we've never seen before, that are physically fit, that are entertaining to watch. And now all of a sudden, for the season after that, you've got 20 new people that are essentially making up for the last 4 years of not having the Real World. So I think that would be an amazing season to witness.
I co-sign on that. Completely so. Anyway, guys, I know that we're getting close to the end, but I want to just cover a couple quick things. So, outside of reality television, you have covered pop culture such as Harry Potter and Hamilton, which, by the way, I listened to part 1 with you guys and Scott. It was really great. You guys need to go listen to it.
Thank you
so much.
So, how has covering other items of pop culture helped the Hedrich Files podcast stand out against other reality TV-based podcasts?
I think that's a really great question. And like I said at the top, it's kind of like Hedrich Files, or like my brand of podcasting, has never exclusively been defined by reality TV, let alone the challenge. Like the Rotten Banana Podcast was always, to me, seen as one of multiple shows that I would like to do. So covering, reviewing movies, and obviously Hamilton was Allie's brilliant idea and totally not in my wheelhouse, but I love expanding my horizons to stuff like that. So clearly Rotten Banana is like our flagship show, and that is what we're known for. And when we go to a challenge event, nobody's running up to me and being like, "Oh man, I love that review of the Animatrix that you did 5.5 years ago with your friend Jono down in LA." Nobody's recognizing me for that. But I said before we started this, I studied film at Colorado. I've worked in the film industry in LA and the Bay Area for 10 years now. So like I've always had my fingers in a million different types of media and like love television, love movies. The Challenge has clearly always been one of my, if not my favorite show of all time. But to have these other shows, and I am absolutely not knocking anybody that does this, but not having to rely on The Challenge exclusively like we're seeing now. This is going to arguably be the longest off season between Challenge seasons ever. No one even has any clue when Challenge 36 is going to air. I kind of like not having to have that crutch of like, oh, our audience exclusively expects us to cover the Challenge. We got to go back and just review old seasons. I am not knocking that whatsoever. I am super looking forward to other podcasts covering old seasons. I think that's a great idea. But for me, I have a finite amount of Challenge and reality TV that I can watch, and I love reviewing other stuff, and I love when Allie texts me out of the blue and is like, hey, there's this new thing that's out that you probably might not know about, or you might have more expertise than I do. Let's go and podcast about that. So I love that we have this kind of expansive way that we can talk about other content.
I think it's also a great way for people to get to know us as people without us just talking about ourselves, right? Like when you tune into a podcast, you tune in because you want to hear the subject of what was advertised to you. You don't want to tune in to hear me and Logan talk about, you know, how we grew up, what our parents are like, what our relationships are like, what our favorite meals are. But when you hear us talk about Harry Potter and you hear me talk about that I grew up with Harry Potter, that I am really proud to be a Slytherin and I am everything that a Slytherin embodies. Like you learn about somebody in that way. And I think that's been a really authentic way for people to get to know us. And it's also very reflective of our friendship. And that's one of my personal favorite things about it, because we aren't just friends because of the Challenge, right? Like that's how we met. That's how we got connected for the first time. But there's so much more to our friendship. Like if you guys saw our text messages, it's rarely about the Challenge. Like we are real people who are real friends now. And I think by expanding what we talk about together on the record in a podcast, you kind of feel that more. Like, oh, this isn't the only thing that they have in common. They don't just talk on Thursday nights and then never again. You know what I mean? Like it kind of, you get that like warm, fuzzy feeling from it.
Absolutely, guys. So I just want to let you know, before this interview came on, I was looking at Twitter, and you guys have announced Trivia Night!
Yay!
Woo!
Yeah.
So, how have you guys envisioned Trivia Night?
Literally, this is an idea.
In the 30 seconds that we've talked about it and considered it.
This idea happened this morning. At my previous job, I worked at a private alumni club for the University of North Carolina, and I was, for better or for worse, the trivia host. So I came up with all the questions. I hosted trivia on stage with a microphone. Hated it most of the time, liked it sometimes, but it came out of a conversation with a friend in the Challenge community who said, I'm really missing like interactions with my friends in all of this coronavirus, quarantine, the whole thing. You know, for a true extrovert, this is hard. This is really hard. People who thrive on personal relationships are having a hard time. And not to get all deep and whatever, it's still going to be just trivia for fun, but you know, we all know each other because of the internet. Why not continue that relationship with Zoom trivia nights and just have an excuse to get together and see each other's faces and do something fun? And, you know, honestly, this is the kind of thing that me, Allie, as a person would do without the, like, podcast platform. Like, it's just something that I'd be like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to start hosting weekly trivia for my whoever wants to do it on Twitter. So I'm super excited. It's just another thing that Logan and I get to plan together, and can't wait to see everyone's faces and have some fun and be silly, and just an excuse to maybe forget that everything is terrible.
Yeah, you gotta get creative with events and event planning right now. My girlfriend works for a major university around here and does event planning for them, and events, are obviously not the biggest thing going on right now. So she has hosted company-wide trivia, and a bunch of her friends have brought us into trivia events. So I think it's a good way to be social while like having a task to do, because the one thing I hate is when you just like log into a Zoom call or a Google Hangout with your friends and you're like, so, what's new with you, Jacob? And you're like, nothing, dude. I'm doing the same thing you're doing. I'm sitting at home watching TV. And it's like, this is an activity where we can be social and hang out. So, I expect to see you there. And I hope we get to hang out then too, man.
I would love to do it, guys. I would love to do it. So, this is the second to last question. Why should my audience listen to the Hedrich Files Podcast?
I was thinking about this today, and this might not be the most eloquent way to put it, but I like to think of the Hedrich Files as like the classy and the trashy. Like, we talk about trashy reality shows and we talk about the challenge, but occasionally, when we're talking about some high art, we're talking about Harry Potter, we're talking about, there's a new upcoming show that I really, really would like to discuss called, give me a second, I'll loop back to it. It's the new HBO show. God, this is going to kill me. Anyways, so like I have this, like film analysis background, so we can go really deep on like the cinematography of a certain shot, but we can also just be like, yeah, man, like Rogan absolutely smashed Nelson in that headbanger of a hall brawl. So like we cover such a wide variety of topics that if you're just into the reality TV stuff, like by all means, by being a subscriber, I don't expect you to listen to every single pod we put out there, because not everything is everyone's cup of tea. But I think that my interests combine with Allie's interests, because it's not a complete circle. Our Venn diagram is not a perfect circle. We have vastly different things that we like, but I like being brought into the niche communities that Allie's a part of online. Like, I have never watched a single episode of One Tree Hill, and Allie is going to die on that One Tree Hill trying to get me to watch an episode of it. And I assure you, she will make me podcast about it. So that's my pitch for the Hedrich Files. Allie, what do you have to say about it?
My pitch would be that we are real people and we enjoy it. And we've always said that if it doesn't feel fun, we're going to stop doing it. So we are not like people who act one way in our real lives and then get on the podcast and play a character. You can come to anything that we do under the Hedrich Files umbrella and get a sense of real connection. We are real friends, and we have made real friends through our audience. So, Logan has the film side. I always joke he was kind of like the cinema geek when it came to the Harry Potter stuff, and I would talk about nothing technical or whatever. But it truly, for me, I think maybe not what sets us apart, but what feels special about it to me is that we've gotten so much feedback from people who say it feels like I'm just listening to two friends talk about my favorite show. And that's what it is.
So the show I was referring to is Lovecraft Country, and it's I covered Game of Thrones for the last 4 seasons of it. So there's always something that is if you're a watcher of television or pop culture, I used to do podcasts every summer on Comic-Con, which of course didn't happen this summer, but I'm into Comic-Con. Oh man, I've been wanting to go for years. I never got to when I was in LA. But if you're a fan of pop culture and geek culture and reality TV, my slogan has always been covering our pop culture influence, our pop culture footprint, one podcast at a time. So I assure you there is something you'll be interested in if you take a look at the Hedrich Files feed.
Awesome. So guys, where can my audience connect with you?
Well, you're the social media guru over here.
We are definitely both very active on Twitter and love meeting new people on Twitter. I had someone that I got connected with on a mutual follow today, and from a Derek Kaczynski tweet, and she DM'd me and she was like, wait, I just figured out who you are, which is like, A, super flattering. Thank you for pretending like I'm someone. But B, it's like, we probably already know each other, so let's just continue the conversation.
Yeah, I've been a big proponent of Twitter. Instagram is kind of just like, I don't really promote the podcast too much over there. It's kind of just like pictures of me going on adventures and hanging out with my dog. And Facebook is kind of the linchpin for the downfall of Western democracy. So I try not to support it too much, but Twitter is the place to find me.
Alrighty, guys. For more information, so guys, you can listen to other episodes of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, and also Spotify. And also you can actually watch some of my episodes, including my sit-downs with both Pauly Calafiore and Joss Mooney on my YouTube channel, Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. And also, are you on social media? Connect with me. I'm sorry to say this, Logan. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. Once again, it's Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. And if you want to read some of my America's Got Talent recaps or my other interviews and my music reviews, head to jakes-take.com. Once again, jakes-take.com. Allie and Logan, this has been one of my favorite interviews so far in 2020, and I believe that this is the start of a friendship.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. And, man, I wish we had connected 10 years ago, back when we were both roaming around Boulder. But I'm glad that we did today.
Logan just said thanks so much for coming on. Logan, you're not the host.
I can't help myself, you know?
Same with me. It was Rob. I'm like, okay, Rob, thank you so much. Alrighty, guys. We will see you guys later, and have a fantastic day, and enjoy yourselves, guys. You deserve it.